She could still hear the drums even after the sound had stopped. Not real ones, not anymore. Just the echo that lived in the hollows of her chest, deep where the soul curls in on itself. Ahyoka blinked against the dying sun. The sky was a canvas of bruised gold and morning blue, and the sagebrush swayed in rhythms she no longer knew how to follow. The fire behind her had long since turned to ash, smoke curling upward like a ghost asking forgiveness. She lay where they'd left her, spine bent, legs gone from just above the knee, stumps wrapped in soiled cloth and silence. Her tribe had ridden off at dawn, one by one, not looking back. Even her own sister had placed the bread beside her like a favor and pressed her lips to Ahyoka's brow like you do a dead child. But she wasn't dead. That was the trouble of it. The pain was a creature now, one she kept company with. Sharp in the early hours, dull in the dusk. She dug her fingers into the earth, dirt crusting under her nails. The ground was dry, cracked with thirst, much like her. A lizard scurried past her hand, tail flicking like a whip. The sky pulsed with heat, the last song of cicadas tapering into the hush before night. She could smell herself, sweat, blood, smoke. Her dress, once red with embroidery, now looked the color of iron dust. She hadn't cried. Not when her legs were taken. Not when her people declared her spirit no longer worthy. Not when her uncle turned his horse away and said nothing. She had given enough tears to the gods. Let the wind weep for her now. That's when she heard it, the creak of a wagon axle. She didn't lift her head. She didn't hope anymore. But the sound came closer. Hoofbeats followed, slow and certain. Whoever it was didn't ride fast, didn't come with force. Just approached like the dust itself had summoned them. A shadow crossed her eyes. She squinted against the sun. A man stood over her, tall, broad-shouldered, a rifle slung over his back but untouched. He wore a felt hat, the kind curled at the brim from years of use, and a coat with fraying at the elbows. His boots were scuffed, dust-caked, worn like someone who didn't much care to impress anyone. He didn't speak. She turned her face away, willing her heart to go quiet. If he was here to take something, he'd have little left to steal. A thud beside her, a folded blanket. Then the slow trickle of water from a canteen, the scent of leather and iron. Still no words. He knelt, not close, just enough to set a small tin of beans near the bread her sister left to rot. Then, firewood. She didn't ask for it. But he arranged it anyway, one piece, then another, dry branches like offerings. She finally looked at him. His face was sun-browned, jaw lined with stubble, and eyes that didn't scan her like others did. No recoil. No disgust. Just tired. "What do you want?" she asked, voice more breath than sound. His gaze flicked to her legs. She waited for pity. But none came. "You're still breathing," he said. Then he stood and walked back to his wagon. Ahyoka didn't move that night. But her mind stayed awake long after the stars blinked into place. The man hadn't left. She could hear the crunch of his boots now and then, hear him adjust the saddle straps, feed his horses. No fire for himself, only the one for her. That alone unnerved her more than any violence might have. At dawn, the scent of eggs hit her nose. Her stomach twisted, memory or hunger, she wasn't sure. She tried to sit. Failed. Tried again. Her arms were shaking. Her breath burned. Then, arms. He was lifting her. "Don't," she hissed, twisting. He didn't let go. Didn't speak. She beat her fists against his chest. It was like striking a stone. Finally, she went still. He carried her like something breakable. Her legs didn't dangle, they no longer could, but the phantom weight of them made her feel heavier than ever. He set her in the wagon, nestling her against a bundle of hay, and pulled his coat over her shoulders like it was second nature. She turned her face to the side and stared at the wooden floor. Her cheeks were burning. Not from fever. From shame. When the wagon lurched into motion, she expected him to ask what happened, why her people left her, how she'd ended up half a woman. But he said nothing. She stole glances. He didn't look at her. Just at the trail ahead. Hands steady on the reins, mouth in a straight line like someone trying not to bleed. The rhythm of the wheels became a lullaby, and exhaustion pulled her under. When she woke, the sun was low again. Pines lined the edge of the trail. The cabin came into view like a half-remembered dream. Small, one window, moss along the roof, but smoke curled from the chimney like a promise. The wagon stopped. He got down and opened the back. Again, he lifted her without asking. Again, she fought the heat crawling up her throat. She wasn't light. Hunger made her hollow, but shame made her heavy. Still, he held her with care. The cabin smelled of cedar and wood smoke. There were no luxuries, just a handmade chair, a single bed, and a shelf lined with tin cups. A dried corn braid hung by the hearth. No mirror. He laid her on a quilt near the fire, then turned away. She studied the room. No woman's touch. No photograph. Just solitude pressed into every surface. He returned with a steaming mug, set it beside her. Drink. She stared at it. I'm not your kin. He didn't blink. Didn't say you were. You don't know what I've done. I don't need to. That quiet reply dropped between them like an anchor. She picked up the mug. It was bitter, scalding, but warm. He moved to the door and stood there, watching the sky. Finally, she asked, "Your name?" "Boone." "Why help me?" He paused. "Because I was tired of stepping over broken things like they weren't there." Her throat closed up. That night, he slept on the porch. She lay in the cabin, staring at the ceiling where a knot in the wood looked like a bird with one wing. She dreamed she was dancing, feet bare, beads jingling, hair long and free. She woke to the wind howling, and a tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. The next day, she tried to move herself, dragged her body to the window and stared out at the frost-silvered land. Boone returned with a wooden chair. Not store-bought, he'd built it. Wide and stable. For her. He said nothing as he placed it near the fire. She looked at it, then at him, then at the fire. "I used to be a dancer," she whispered. "I know," he replied. Her lips parted. He tilted his head. "You still move people." She couldn't breathe for a moment. Outside, a horse passed. A woman on it glanced toward the cabin and whispered something to her husband. The town would talk. She turned her face to the window, chin high. Let them. Because for the first time in months, her hands didn't tremble. That night, Boone carried her to the porch, set her gently in the new chair. She wrapped herself in his coat. The stars blinked alive. His hand brushed hers. Just once. She didn't pull away. The coyotes howled in the distance. And for the first time in weeks, the drums in her chest didn't ache. They pulsed, steady and soft, like something coming back.